All right, ready to dive deep into minimalist budgeting.
Always ready for a good deep dive.
And today we're looking at The Minimalist Budget.
By Simeon Lindstrom, right?
You got it. A pretty popular book, it seems.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it had almost 1,000 ratings on Goodreads.
And with a 3.46 rating, people seem to like it.
Definitely seems like it struck a chord with a lot of readers.
So Lindstrom, the author, is a big advocate for, well, minimalist living in general.
And in this book, he kind of applies that to personal finances.
Yeah, like how can we simplify our finances and in turn, like, simplify our lives?
I think what's really interesting about this book is he doesn't just talk about cutting expenses.
He goes deeper.
Yeah, he digs into the psychology of spending
Mm.
and encourages a total mindset shift.
Mindset shift. Okay, now I'm even more intrigued.
Right. It's not just about, like, budgeting tactics.
So it's not just another version of extreme couponing then.
Not at all.
Gotcha.
It's more about being intentional with your money, aligning your spending with what matters to you.
I like that. So aligning with your values.
Yeah, kind of like decluttering your finances the way you might declutter your home.
Oh, that's a good analogy. Getting rid of the unnecessary to make room for what you value.
Exactly.
I mean, it's so easy to accumulate financial clutter without even realizing it.
Oh, for sure.
You know, those subscription services you never use, gym memberships you forget about.
It all adds up.
And it's not even just about the money itself, it's the mental energy, right?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. The mental energy we waste on things that don't bring us joy or get us closer to our goals.
That's so true.
Lindstrom really argues that simplifying our finances can free up that energy.
To focus on what truly matters.
Exactly.
I love that. So where do we even begin with this whole minimalist budgeting thing?
Well, Lindstrom stresses the importance of clear financial goals.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's like building a house, you need a blueprint before you start laying bricks.
Yeah, if you don't have clear goals, it's easy to get sidetracked and kind of lose sight of the big picture. It's like wandering through a grocery store, a lot of shopping lists, right?
Yeah,
You end up with a cart full of random stuff, but none of what you actually need.
I've totally been there.
Me too.
So in Chapter 2, Lindstrom outlines this process for figuring out what financial success means to you, then prioritizing those goals and making sure your spending aligns with them.
So we've decluttered the mental clutter, laid out our financial blueprint, but now how do we turn those goals into an actual budget?
Good question, and I think this is where some people get intimidated.
Yeah, spreadsheets and formulas can be overwhelming.
But Lindstrom has a solution for that. He advocates for something called a zero-based budget.
Zero-based budget, that sounds kind of intense.
It might sound intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple. Basically, you assign every dollar you earn a specific job at the beginning of each month.
Okay, so if you earn, let's say, $4,000, you allocate every single dollar to a specific category, like rent, groceries, savings, fun stuff.
Exactly, until you're left with zero.
So it's like every dollar has a purpose.
Yeah, a mission.
I like that. It definitely stops that feeling of where did all my money go at the end of the month,
Right, and it forces you to be conscious about your spending.
instead of mindlessly swiping your card.
You have to think, does this purchase align with my goals? Is it worth sacrificing something else in my budget?
I'll admit I've definitely fallen prey to impulse purchases before.
I think we all have at some point.
You know, those tempting sales or gadgets I just had to have.
I feel that.
This zero-based budget would probably save me from a lot of buyer's remorse.
It's about moving from a reactive to a proactive approach with your money.
Taking control and directing it toward the life you want.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sold on the concept, but how do we actually put this into practice?
Yeah.
This is where it gets hands-on, right?
Yeah, I get that. And Lindstrom doesn't shy away from those practical details. He gives tons of tips and strategies for creating and maintaining a minimalist budget.
Okay, give us the highlights. What are some of the key takeaways we should be on the lookout for?
Well, in chapters 3 and 4, he really gets into tactics for cutting unnecessary expenses.
That sounds promising. This is where we start looking for those areas of financial clutter, right?
Precisely.
I'm ready to get to work, so give us a sneak peek. What are some areas he focuses on? Are we talking about giving up lattes and avocado toast?
It's not really about deprivation, more about being strategic.
Okay, good to know.
One of his first suggestions is tracking your spending meticulously.
Oh, like actually writing down every penny you spend?
You can use a spreadsheet, an app, even a notebook, whatever works for you.
The key is to just be aware of where your money is going.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
I bet I would be. It's so easy to lose track of those little expenses that add up over time.
Exactly. And once you see it all laid out, it's easier to see where you can cut back without feeling like you're missing out.
Right. That makes sense. So what else?
Well, once you've got a clear picture of your spending, you can start using some of his other strategies, like negotiating your bills.
Negotiating bills. That sounds a little scary. I'm not exactly a master negotiator.
You don't have to be. Lindstrom gives lots of practical tips and even scripts for talking to service providers.
Really? Like what to say?
He even tells a story about how he saved over $500 a year just by calling his internet provider and asking for a better rate.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. I guess it never hurts to ask.
Exactly. The worst they can say is no.
True. So what else does he recommend for cutting expenses?
He's a big proponent of minimizing impulse purchases.
Oh, those add to cart moments. I know them well.
He suggests putting a waiting period in place before buying anything non-essential, like give yourself 24 hours or even a week to cool off and really think about whether you need it.
That's a great idea. I can't tell you how many times I've bought something on a whim and regretted it later.
A little breathing room can help you make much more mindful choices.
Totally. So often the urge to buy just fades away after a day or two.
And you realize you didn't really need it after all.
And you've saved yourself some money and clutter in the process. I'm loving these practical tips. It feels empowering to take control like this.
It really is.
What about entertainment?
Hmm.
Does minimalist budgeting mean becoming a hermit and never leaving the house?
Not at all. Lindstrom believes in enjoying life, but he encourages us to do it in a mindful and resourceful way.
Okay, so how do we have fun without breaking the bank?
He suggests exploring free or low-cost options, like instead of expensive dinners out, host potlucks with friends,
I like that.
or have movie nights at home instead of going to the theater.
Or use your local library instead of buying new books.
Exactly. It's about being creative and finding joy in simple things, rather than relying on expensive outings or possessions for happiness.
I love those ideas. It's about being creative and resourceful.
And often, those experiences end up being more rewarding and memorable anyway.
So it's a win-win, saving money, reducing clutter, and creating more meaningful experiences.
I think so.
I'm starting to see how this minimalist budgeting can impact all areas of our lives.
It really is about so much more than just dollars and cents. It's about aligning your spending with your values and creating a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
This is getting really interesting. I'm excited to dive deeper into these topics, but for now, let's give our listeners a chance to reflect on what we've covered so far. We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into the minimalist budget. So before we jump to the break, we were talking about all these really practical tips like tracking spending and negotiating bills.
Things you don't always think of as like exciting parts of budgeting.
Right. But what I found interesting is that Lindstrom frames it almost as a game.
Yeah, like a challenge.
Yeah, like a challenge to find those hidden savings in your budget.
Exactly. Makes it more fun than a chore.
And speaking of challenges, I'm curious about his approach to investing. That's an area I personally feel a bit lost in.
A lot of people do. It can be intimidating.
Yeah.
But that's where Chapter 5 comes in, maximizing savings and investment strategies. He really emphasizes having that clear savings plan.
So not just saving, but then what to do with those savings.
Yeah, then it's about exploring different investment options, making your money work for you.
Okay, so let's talk investing, because I'll admit all the jargon and complex strategies can get a bit overwhelming.
For sure.
Does Lindstrom kind of break it down for us regular folks?
He does. He gives a really approachable overview of different investment types like stocks, bonds, mutual funds,
And he explains it in plain English.
without all the confusing lingo.
Good, because sometimes I need things explained like I'm 5.
I get it.
So what's one key takeaway from his investing approach?
One thing that stood out to me was his emphasis on index fund investing.
Index funds.
Basically, there are baskets of stocks that track a particular market index, like the S&P 500.
Okay, I'm following so far, but what makes them so great?
Well, Lindstrom points out several advantages. First, they're low cost compared to actively managed funds, which have higher fees.
Makes sense.
Second, they're inherently diversified because they hold a wide range of stocks.
So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And third, they tend to perform really well over time, often even better than those actively managed funds.
Interesting. So it's like getting a pre-selected, diversified portfolio without having to do all the research and stock picking myself.
That's the idea.
Sign me up.
He actually shares a story in the book about how he started investing in index funds early on, and it's helped him build wealth over time.
That's pretty inspiring. It shows you don't have to be a financial expert to make smart choices.
Right. You don't need a fancy degree.
But even with a solid investment strategy, I know from experience that sticking to a budget long term can be tough.
It is. Life happens. Unexpected things come up.
Exactly. And sometimes you just want to treat yourself.
That's totally fair.
So how does Lindstrom address this? What does he say about maintaining this minimalist lifestyle over time?
That's a great question, and it's something he tackles directly in Chapter 6. He acknowledges it's not always easy, but he offers some helpful strategies.
Okay, I'm all ears. I need all the help I can get.
One of his key recommendations is to regularly review and adjust your budget.
So not just set it and forget it.
Right, he suggests doing it monthly, at least,
Ah.
or more often if your situation changes.
Life is always changing, so your budget needs to be flexible too.
Exactly. He even suggests having a miscellaneous category in your budget.
For those unexpected things.
Yeah, those unexpected expenses that pop up so you don't feel like you're constantly failing or depriving yourself.
Oh, that's smart. I always feel guilty when I have to dip into savings for unplanned things. This seems more forgiving and sustainable.
Another strategy he recommends is finding an accountability partner or joining a supportive community.
Oh, like a budgeting buddy.
Exactly. Sharing your journey can be really motivating. You get encouragement, a sense of camaraderie.
It's easier to stay committed when you know you're not alone.
And Lindstrom also emphasizes celebrating your progress.
Oh, that's important.
Acknowledging those wins, no matter how small, it reinforces those good habits
Yeah.
and makes the journey more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's so easy to forget to appreciate how far you've come when you're always focused on the next goal.
Right. You got to celebrate those wins.
So what kind of rewards does he suggest?
Nothing fancy. It could be something like a movie night, a new book, a day trip.
I like those ideas. It's about recognizing your efforts and giving yourself permission to enjoy the results.
It is.
But, what really stands out to me about his approach is that he goes beyond the purely financial side of minimalist budgeting.
Yeah, it's not just about the numbers.
He dedicates a whole chapter to exploring non-financial benefits, and that's what I'm super curious about.
Me too. This is where we see how it can transform our whole lives, not just our bank accounts.
Right. It's about creating a life that feels aligned and fulfilling, and that's where we're headed next.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about these non-financial benefits of minimalist budgeting, and honestly, I'm really intrigued by this idea.
Yeah, I think this is where things get really interesting.
It feels like we're about to unlock a whole new level here.
Definitely. In Chapter 7, Lindstrom gets into how this approach can impact, all areas of our lives, not just our wallets.
So it's not just about money, it's about more than that.
Way more. It affects our relationships, our sense of purpose, everything.
Okay, I'm hooked. So tell me, what are some of those non-financial benefits he talks about?
Well, one of the biggest ones is less stress and anxiety.
Oh, that makes sense.
When you're not constantly worried about money, it frees up so much mental space.
I know when my finances are in order, I just feel lighter,
Exactly, like a weight has been lifted.
Totally.
And that feeling can spill over into other areas of your life too.
How so?
You might have more time and energy for your passions, your relationships, or just enjoying the present moment.
Without that constant money worry in the back of your mind.
Exactly. It's like you're breaking free.
Free from a mental prison.
You're not chained to your finances anymore. You can experience life on your own terms.
I love that. So what other benefits does he mention?
He talks about how minimalist budgeting can help you connect with your values.
Interesting.
When you're intentional about your spending, you're basically saying, this is what matters to me.
So it's about putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, instead of spending on things that don't align with your priorities, you're making conscious choices that reflect what you truly believe in.
And that can be really powerful.
Incredibly empowering. It's about taking control and shaping your life in a way that feels authentic.
I've heard that saying, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value.
Exactly. Your budget becomes a mirror, reflecting your values and your vision for your life.
Makes sense. What about our relationship with stuff? I feel like I tend to accumulate clutter, and I wonder if there's a connection between our spending habits and that.
Oh, there definitely is. Lindstrom talks about how this approach often leads to a more minimalist lifestyle in general.
You start questioning your spending, and then you start questioning your consumption, too?
It's like a domino effect. You declutter your finances, then your home, your schedule, maybe even your relationships.
Letting go of the things that don't serve you anymore.
Making space for what truly matters.
And that can be really liberating.
It's about simplifying and focusing on experiences over possessions, finding joy in the simple things that money can't buy.
It's like shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Yeah, recognizing that true wealth isn't about how much stuff you have.
It's about the richness of your experiences and connections.
Perfectly said. And that's really the heart of the minimalist budget.
It's not just a financial how-to, it's a guide to living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
It really is.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for sharing your insights. This has been eye-opening for me.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
And to our listener, we hope this has given you some new ideas and maybe inspired you to look at your own finances with a fresh perspective.
Remember, it's not about deprivation. It's about empowerment.
It's about aligning your spending with your values.
And creating a life that reflects what truly matters to you.
If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's that financial freedom is possible for everyone.
It really is.
It starts with a mindset shift, a commitment to being intentional.
And a willingness to embrace simplicity.
Start small, be patient with yourself, and celebrate those wins along the way.
And most importantly, enjoy the journey.
Minimalist budgeting isn't just about the destination. It's about creating a life that feels rich and meaningful every step of the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the minimalist budget.
It's been fun.
And we'll see you next time for another exploration into the world of ideas and knowledge.